So today I'm starting back in on this piece. I'm working to add more rich detail and a little bit more fun. So I'll talk about that more as I work. Um, but just starting off, as always, I've got my palette here with lots of colors already mixed. And then up on top here, you see each color individually squeezed out. So I have a little bit of both pure color and mixed color. And of course, a big canister of brushes that I'm sitting next to and pulling from as I go. And of course, a water jar and some paper towels so that I can keep wiping off my brushes as I paint. So I'm going to structure this kind of like the last video, the part one, where I painted in real time for a while. Then I'll switch over to time lapse so that you can get a quicker summary of what I'm doing. So the first area I'm going to work on is going to be right up in here at the very top line where the trees meet the sky. And I'm adding a little bit more fun in here. So what I mean by that is a little bit more bright orangey color, which you might see as you're looking toward a bright sun. Sometimes the shapes that you see when looking right toward a bright light come off as kind of a reddish orange. So that's what I'm showing right up here where these trees meet the sky, and they're right by that bright sun. And again, I'm not being too exact with these shapes and lines, just kind of hinting at sort of that jagged tree line. This is the phase of painting when the basics are laid in, when it really starts to get fun, in my opinion. I'm coming back after a couple of days, so this painting has been resting for a couple of days, and everything's nicely dried, so I don't have to worry about smudging anything as I'm starting off with my hand, although you'll notice I do have a spot already on my hand this morning. Okay. Checking back at my reference photo, so I'm going to develop these trees a bit more. You may be able to notice I've done quite a bit more on these trees on this side of the painting. This side I've left pretty raw. I haven't really touched them since I first blocked them out. So I'm going to be adding some more detail into those next. I'm going to start with this one and move toward the right so that my hand doesn't go back and smudge anything I've already done. Some of these things just become second nature as you paint and continue practicing with your painting. So I mixed up kind of a nice purple here. It's pretty dark. Kind of going back and forth with brush strokes. starting at the top and moving my way down on this tree. And when we paint trees, especially evergreens like this, we want to pay special attention not to make them exactly, what is the word I'm looking for? Not exactly the same on both sides. So you want them to be able to have a lot of variety within the branches. They're not mirror images from one side to the other. Pretty rare that you actually see a tree that looks that perfect. And often if you do, it's in some curated garden that's been shaped to look that way. And this is not what we're painting. Not today, anyway. Making sure to leave a bit of a shadow here at the base of the tree. So I'm not really overthinking that trunk. It is set into the snow, so you're not going to see a lot of, other brush around it like you might in another season. Keeping it simple with the snowy landscape. The trunk is just kind of, the base of it is buried in the snow. So for this tree right behind the one I was just working on, I'm actually going to lighten that color a little bit so it recedes into the background. Just slightly. It sets it apart just a bit, but you also need to make sure that that color isn't too close to what's directly behind it, because we've got another grouping of trees right back there. So this one works pretty well. Darkening just a little bit, and then actually we will lighten up these trees right behind it as well. You can always go back and change, modify what you've already put down. By the way, this brush that I'm using, let's see, it's a Cobra water mixable oil color number 4. And it's again one of these filbert brushes, I believe they're called. That's very flat. So it makes some nice sharp lines. Or if you use it on its side, it acts more like a paddle, and it can really spread a nice long line of color, a bit thicker. Okay, there's that one. And now we'll go for this biggest tree over here on the right. And I'm going to make that one a bit more teal greenish, since this one is more in the reds and purples. So So we want to have a little bit of contrast in the shapes, the values, and the colors. Can help set them apart. So here we go. Again, kind of using that same back and forth brush stroke motion. I do a lot of looking at trees whenever I'm outside, and I've noticed some of these evergreen shaped trees will start with their branches toward the top pointing slightly upward, and as they as you look down toward the bottom of the tree, the branches are more weighed down and they actually slope downward. So I guess that's what I'm going for with this tree. This one right here has the branches moving, pointing up all the way down. And we've already got that nice kind of brownish purple color behind it, behind the brush strokes that I'm putting down. So we don't need to cover all of those. That adds a nice dimension to this tree. And with acrylics, they're always going to dry a little bit differently than how they look when they're wet. So we're going to wait that out, see how this one dries. And then if we want to add a little bit more layering, some more accent colors to this, we will do that. This one, you can't really see the trunk because these lower branches are covering it. Okay. So the next thing I'm going to do is get more painted on this sky. So I'm using a similar strategy to a piece that I did earlier in the summer of 2022 called Rhythm, with a lot of vertical strokes making up the sky. So kind of different patches of an individual color with small leading to larger vertical strokes making up the overall sky. So I'm going to stick with kind of this lighter pinkish peach color palette. We do have a little bit of bluish green coming through over here. So there's just a little bit of variety in that sky. So I'm actually going to start with a lighter blue over in this edge. But we're going to leave leave the blues off in the corner and make most of the sky that peachy pinky color. That's going to contrast nicely with the blues and purples that are in the rest of the landscape. And again, I'm wrapping all the way over the top of the painting so that that is united with what you see on the front. And we don't want this to appear like a coloring book where we're just laying in all the same color in one shape. So I am switching this up a little bit. So you'll see I've painted a few strokes here, and then I'm going to fill it in with basically the same color, but just slightly, let's see, slightly lighter. I'm mixing in a little white. So you want to keep this, or I want to keep this as kind of a visual pattern, which is, I think, more interesting to look at than just filling in one whole color in a big patch. All right, so I'm actually going to start the time lapse so you can watch, now that I've explained the strategy behind what I'm doing in the sky, you can watch as I fill it all in. This circle right here represents where the sun is. I'll probably keep it kind of a light, bright circle, but try not to make it too blatantly obvious. So stick with me as I move to time lapse. All right, so I just wrapped up that nice, softish yellow sky. And so far, I'm pretty pleased with it. I will give it some time, come back and look at it after maybe another day, as I usually do with my paintings. I will likely notice something that I want to tweak, but overall, it does have the look that I was going for. So the next thing I'm going to do is start in on the water. And I will, again, kind of like I did with the sky, talk through what I'm doing, the strokes that I'm laying down, and why, and then move into the time lapse for the water as well. So let's position that canvas right up front so you can see it. Okay, pretty good. I want to get you close enough so that you can see exactly what I'm doing. So the water is going to have a lot of the same colors that we see up in the sky. So it's really reflecting that sky with just some soft touches of these trees. Now, when I paint a summery scene, you'll notice a lot more movement and kind of stronger brush strokes, stronger contrasts in the water. This time around, I'm aiming to keep it softer because it's actually frozen. It's frozen over. So when you look at a frozen lake or pond, you'll notice that it is very soft. You don't see a lot of those strong reflections of actual objects. It's more of a glazed over, icy look. So that's what we're going for today. And I'm actually going to just start here with a larger brush. This one has all of the information either rubbed off or painted over. But this is another kind of wide, narrow brush. Wide and narrow. Wide this way, narrow when you hold it in profile. But it's a lot bigger than the brush that I was just working with. Okay, so I'm actually just dipping right back into the colors that I was using for the sky. And I'm starting with actually this might be a bit too light. I'm going to go more for that pinkish orange. And as I'm looking at my reference photo, the water is actually a little bit on the darker side when we're comparing it with the sky. So we should be able to see that contrast. The water is reflecting the sky, but it is not an absolute mirror image of what we see on the sky. So I'm adding a little bit more purple and a little bit more orange to create sort of this soft lavender pink shade I'm going to be putting down here. And I'm aiming to keep these strokes quite horizontal. And paying attention to leave this blue edge to the water. We can go back around that one and touch it up later to make sure it's coming through. But that adds just a little bit of depth to the edge of this water. So you can tell that there's a thickness to that land and the snow and ice that you see next to the water. It helps to step back every once in a while and make sure that those strokes are actually horizontal. Especially as you've been painting for a little while, it is easy to start painting crooked when you think that you're painting straight lines. So always got to review that just to make sure. Adding just a little bit more lavender into this color. And I'm going to move my canvas out a little bit this way because I'm going to paint just a bit right on the bottom here. We always want to keep that image that we're painting on the front wrapped around the edge of the canvas. Not everybody does this. I think it's a nice touch because the painting, wherever it's going to live in its home, in its new home when it's done, can be hung up on the wall without framing. Some people prefer a frame around the edge, but I like to hang them up without. Okay, so in my source image, I do have just a little bit of soft, dark shading coming through on the water. So I'm just going to add kind of a band going all the way down. But again, we're keeping it soft, much less direct than you'll see in some of my other summertime water paintings. Okay. Mixing up some more color that I'm going to bring in over on this side. So I had already laid down some of this darkness from these reflected trees right over here. Since they're the closest thing to this body of water, you'll actually see some darkness from those being reflected. I'm going to soften it as I add these new layers in here. And actually, I'm going to add a little bit more of that sort of teal right in here. Since this tree has more of that greenish teal, I just added that to my paint mixture. And again, coming down here, all the way to the bottom. It helps to leave just a little hint of that color that you're wrapping around the edge, even if you're not doing the whole edge at one time. So you have something to work with. I usually do the full edges last when I'm finishing off a painting. Okay. Rinsing off my brush and wiping it off here on my paper towel. I'm going to go in and add more of this same kind of pinkish lavender that I was using over here. And just putting in a single thicker line over this way to show the water coming in from this edge. And this area right in here is going to be kind of a chunk of snow, like a little island. So we'll develop that a little later. Okay, so now that I've kind of primed you on what I'm working on with this water, I'm going to move into time lapse again. Okay, so we are pretty much done with the water. And you'll notice I put in this very light um, yellowish white reflection of the sun that really helped make this whole painting pop. So I am pretty pleased with that, with how that's turned out so far. I'm just gonna add in this one other area that I referenced earlier. So this is just gonna be kind of a snowy little landmass, or maybe just a big chunk of snow. And to make sure that it doesn't interfere too much with what you're seeing in the water, I'm going to make sure it's fairly dark. So you'll notice this snowy little hillside area is actually quite dark, even though it's covered with white snow. When snow is in the shadows, it turns blue and purple. So that is what we're going to create. So I'm just starting with sort of the bottom area here. Again, we're not really overthinking this part. Okay, so looking back at my reference photo, there's kind of a area like this that's fairly dark. Actually, the edges right around that are even darker. So this is going to be an edge coming down this way, looping around. So this whole area up here is kind of the top, almost like a shelf that we're painting here. And comes down this way. Leaving some dark spots right where the snow meets the water. Oops. Got a little piece of dried paint to remove there. Happens all the time. Okay. So those are kind of the main dark areas. This area right up in here also has kind of a shadow on it. So I'm going to paint. I added a bit of a light ultramarine blue into that to create this color. And I'm kind of flattening out this top edge so that it doesn't mess too much with this nice, oh, I'll have to touch that up later. I had a little brush stroke that went right into the water that I had just painted. So no big deal. Again, that happens all the time. Just have to go back in and clean it up a little bit. So now I'm mixing a little bit more white in with the colors that I was already using. And I'm just going to come right in here. And so we're adding some dimension on top of this sort of snowy shelf. Right there. And we're going to do the same right over in this area down here. And making that brush stroke lighter as I move it up so that it really blends in with this blue. Let's see, I'm going to add a little bit more over this way. Okay. Just kind of moving toward that side. looking at my reference photo, it actually does get a little bit darker over on this very edge right here. So I'm going to add a little bit of dark right there, but not before I finish with a couple more lighter brush strokes. Okay. So this is kind of creating like a horseshoe shape right on top. Okay. It's kind of one of those funny parts of the landscape that doesn't really, like, nobody has any expectations for how it should look because it's just kind of a blob of snow. So I'm trying to use as many clues from my reference photo as possible as to what's actually happening in this snowy shape, because it's not a tree, it's not a lake, it's just kind of its own thing. Mixed up some new color here that I'm going to sweep this way. Actually, I'm going to add in some more dark right on that edge because I want it to actually appear to kind of be sinking back, almost like a hollow part. Yep. And this edge, that means the water. We're adding a little bit more definition there too. And I'm adding a little bit more purple to come back over here. So I'm adding it on this edge, that's right. Meeting up with the outer edge of this painting. Okay. All right, and just a touch more purple to bring this edge up a little higher. Okay. This actually continues a little bit more kind of toward the front here. So I'm adding just a couple more rough brush strokes at the bottom to hint at that. It's not entirely clear where it ends, and that's okay. All right, so I will probably go back and touch this up a little bit. I see I'm missing one big spot right in here. Let's do that. All right, so that actually wraps up the video portion of the creation of this painting. So again, I will be going in and just kind of touching up these trees. There are a few little gaps back in here where I'm going to want to add the same color that I've used in the land on these snowy areas, snowy bands. But other than that, the overall structure of this composition is together. So Thank you so much for joining me as I've created this painting. Of course, check out the notes for this video below, but you can find me at Jenna Paulson Paintings on Instagram, and my website is jennapaulson.com, and that's Paulsen. Thank you so much.